Hi, this is Mike again. Today, I wanted to address Agenda 2030 and its list of Sustainable Development Goals. Agenda 2030 replaces Agenda 2020 and establishes the objectives for the United Nations and its member countries including the United States. The 17 goals of Agenda 2030 are the following. Goal 1 is no poverty. SDG 1 is to end poverty in all its forms everywhere. Achieving SDG 1 would end extreme poverty globally by 2030. One of its indicators is the proportion of the population living below the poverty line. The data is analyzed by sex, age, employment status, and geographical location. The goal has 7 targets and 13 indicators to measure progress. The 5 outcome targets are the eradication of extreme poverty, reduction of all poverty by half, implementation of social protection systems ensuring equal rights to ownership, basic services, technology, and economic resources, and the building of resilience to environmental, economic, and social disasters. The 2 targets related to the means of implementation of SDG 1 are the mobilization of resources to end poverty and the establishment of poverty eradication policy frameworks at all levels. Goal 2 is zero hunger. Sufficient and healthy food should be made available to everyone. SDG 2 is to end hunger, achieve food security and improved nutrition, and promote sustainable agriculture. Indicators for this goal are, for example, the prevalence of undernourishment, the prevalence of severe food insecurity, and the prevalence of stunting among children under 5 years of age. SDG 2 has 8 targets and 14 indicators to measure progress. The 5 outcome targets are, ending hunger and improving access to food, ending all forms of malnutrition, agricultural productivity, sustainable food production systems, and resilient agricultural practices and genetic diversity of seeds, cultivated plants, and farmed and domesticated animals, investments, research, and technology. The 3 means of implementation of these targets include, addressing trade restrictions and distortions in world agricultural markets and food commodity markets and their derivatives. Goal 3 is good health and well-being. SDG 3 is to ensure healthy lives and promote well-being for all at all ages. Important indicators here are life expectancy as well as child and maternal mortality. Further indicators are, for example, deaths from road traffic injuries, prevalence of current tobacco use, and suicide mortality rate. SDG 3 has 13 targets and 28 indicators to measure progress toward targets. The first 9 targets are outcome targets. These include reducing maternal mortality, ending all preventable deaths under 5 years of age, fighting communicable diseases, reducing mortality from non-communicable diseases and promoting mental health, preventing and treating substance abuse, reducing road injuries and deaths, granting universal access to sexual and reproductive care, family planning and education, achieving universal health coverage, reducing illnesses and deaths from hazardous chemicals and pollution, implementing the WHO Framework Convention on Tobacco Control, supporting research, development, and universal access to affordable vaccines and medicines, increasing health financing and support the health workforce in developing countries, and last, improving early warning systems for global health risks. Goal 4 is quality education. SDG 4 is to ensure inclusive and equitable quality education and promote lifelong learning opportunities for all. The indicators for this goal are, for example, attendance rates at primary schools, completion rates of primary school education, participation in tertiary education, and so forth. In each case, parity indices are looked at to ensure that disadvantaged students do not miss. There is also an indicator around the facilities that the school buildings have, for example, access to electricity, the internet, computers, drinking water, toilets, etc. SDG 4 has 10 targets which are measured by 11 indicators. The 7 outcome targets are free primary and secondary education, equal access to quality pre-primary education, affordable technical, vocational, and higher education, increased number of people with relevant skills for financial success, elimination of all discrimination in education, universal literacy and numeracy in education for sustainable development and global citizenship. The 3 means of implementation targets are, build and upgrade inclusive and safe schools, expand higher education scholarships for developing countries and increase the supply of qualified teachers in developing countries. Goal 5 Gender equality 5 is to achieve gender equality and empower all women and girls. Indicators include, for example, having suitable legal frameworks and the representation by women in national parliament or in local deliberative bodies. Numbers on forced marriage and female genital mutilation cutting are also included in another indicator. Other targets include ending all forms of discrimination against all women and girls everywhere, ending violence and exploitation of women and girls, eliminating harmful practices such as child early and forced marriage and female genital mutilation, increasing the value of unpaid care, and promoting shared domestic responsibilities, ensuring full participation of women in leadership and decision-making, ensuring access to universal reproductive rights and health. The three means of implementation targets are fostering equal rights to economic resources, property ownership, and financial services for women, promoting the empowerment of women through technology, and lastly adopting and strengthening policies for gender equality and supporting legislation to enforce it. Goal 6, Clean Water and Sanitation. SDG 6 is to ensure availability and sustainable management of water and sanitation for all. The Joint Monitoring Program or JMP of WHO and UNICEF is responsible for monitoring progress to achieve the first two targets of this goal. Important indicators for this goal are the percentages of the population that uses safely managed drinking water and has access to safely managed sanitation. The JMP reported in 2017 that 4.5 billion people do not have safely managed sanitation. Another indicator looks at the proportion of domestic and industrial wastewater that is safely treated. The 6 outcome targets include providing safe and affordable drinking water, ending open defecation and providing access to sanitation and hygiene, improving water quality, wastewater treatment and safe reuse, increasing water use efficiency and ensuring freshwater supplies, implementing IWRM, protecting and restoring water-related ecosystems. The two means of implementing these targets 49 are to expand water and sanitation support to developing countries and to support local engagement in water and sanitation management. Goal 7 is affordable and clean energy. SDG 7 is to ensure access to affordable, reliable, sustainable and modern energy for all. One of the indicators for this goal is the percentage of the population with access to electricity. Much progress has been made in expanding access to electricity has been made in several countries, notably India, Bangladesh, and Kenya. Other indicators look at the renewable energy share and energy efficiency. The goal has 5 targets to be achieved by 2030. Progress towards the targets is measured by 6 indicators. 3 out of the 5 targets are outcome targets: universal access to modern energy and increase global percentage of renewable energy and double the improvement in energy efficiency. The remaining 2 targets are means of implementation targets to promote access to research, technology, and investments in clean energy and expand and upgrade energy services for developing countries. In other words, these targets include access to affordable and reliable energy while increasing the share of renewable energy in the global energy mix. They also focus on improving energy efficiency, international cooperation, and investment in clean energy infrastructure. Goal 8 is decent work and economic growth. SDG 8 is to promote sustained, inclusive and sustainable economic growth, full and productive employment and decent work for all. Important indicators for this goal include economic growth in least developed countries and the rate of real GDP per capita. Further examples are rates of youth unemployment and occupational injuries or the number of women engaged in the labor force compared to men. SDG 8 has 12 targets in total to be achieved by 2030. Some targets are for 2030, others are for 2020. The first 10 are outcome targets. These are sustainable economic growth, diversify, innovate and upgrade for economic productivity, promote policies to support job creation and growing enterprises, improve resource efficiency and consumption and production, full employment and decent work with equal pay, promote youth employment, education and training, end modern slavery, trafficking, and child labor, protect labor rights and promote safe working environments, promote beneficial and sustainable tourism, universal access to banking, insurance, and financial services. In addition, there are also 2 targets for means of implementation, which are increase aid for trade support and develop a global youth employment strategy. Goal 9 is industry, innovation, and infrastructure. SDG 9 is to build resilient infrastructure, promote inclusive and sustainable industrialization, and foster innovation. Indicators in this goal include, for example, the proportion of people who are employed in manufacturing activities, are living in areas covered by a mobile network, or who have access to the Internet. An indicator that is connected to climate change is CO2 emissions per unit of value added. SDG 9 has 8 targets, and progress is measured by 12 indicators. The first 5 targets are outcome targets: develop sustainable, resilient, and inclusive infrastructures, promote inclusive and sustainable industrialization, increase access to financial services and markets, upgrade all industries and infrastructures for sustainability, enhance research and upgrade industrial technologies. The remaining 3 targets are means of implementation targets. Facilitate sustainable infrastructure development for developing countries, support domestic technology development and industrial diversification, and universal access to information and communications technology. Goal 10 is to reduce inequality. SDG 10 is to reduce income inequality within and among countries. Important indicators for this SDG are income disparities, aspects of gender and disability, as well as policies for migration and mobility of people. The goal has 10 targets to be achieved by 2030. Progress towards targets will be measured by indicators. The first 7 targets are outcome targets: reduce income inequalities, promote universal social, economic, and political inclusion, ensure equal opportunities and end discrimination, adopt fiscal and social policies that promote equality, improve regulation of global financial markets and institutions, enhance representation for developing countries and financial institutions, responsible and well-managed migration policies. The other 3 targets are the means of implementing the targets. These 3 additional targets are special and differential treatment for developing countries, encouraging development assistance and investment in least developed countries, and reducing transaction costs for migrant remittances. Goal 11 is sustainable cities and communities. SDG 11 is to make cities and human settlements inclusive, safe, resilient, and sustainable. Important indicators for this goal are the number of people living in urban slums, the proportion of the urban population who has convenient access to public transport, and the extent of built-up area per person. SDG 11 has 10 targets to be achieved, and this is being measured with 15 indicators. The 7 outcome targets include safe and affordable housing, affordable and sustainable transport systems, inclusive and sustainable urbanization, protection of the world's cultural and natural heritage, reduction of the adverse effects of natural disasters, reduction of the environmental impacts of cities, and providing access to safe and inclusive green and public spaces. The 3 means of implementation targets include strong national and regional development planning, implementing policies for inclusion, resource efficiency, and disaster risk reduction in supporting the least developed countries, and sustainable and resilient building. Goal 12 is responsible consumption and production. SDG 12 is to ensure sustainable consumption and production patterns. One of the indicators is the number of national policy instruments to promote sustainable consumption and production patterns. Another one is global fossil fuel subsidies. An increase in domestic recycling and a reduced reliance on the global plastic waste trade are other actions that might help meet the goal. Sustainable Development Goal 12 has 11 targets. The first 8 are outcome targets, which are: implement the 10-year framework of programs on sustainable consumption and production patterns, achieve the sustainable management and efficient use of natural resources, reduce by half the per capita global food waste at the retail and consumer levels, and the reduction of food losses along production and supply chains, including post-harvest losses, achieving the environmentally sound management of chemicals and all wastes throughout their life cycle, reducing waste generation through prevention, reduction, recycling and reuse, encourage companies to adopt sustainable practices, promote public procurement practices that are sustainable, and ensure that people everywhere have the relevant information and awareness for sustainable development. The 3 means of implementation targets are to support developing countries to strengthen their scientific and technological capacity, develop and implement tools to monitor sustainable development impacts, and remove market distortions, like fossil fuel subsidies, that encourage wasteful consumption. Goal 13 is climate action. SDG 13 is to take urgent action to combat climate change and its impacts by regulating emissions and promoting developments in renewable energy. From 2021 to early 2023, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change published its 6th assessment report, which assesses scientific, technical, and socio-economic information concerning climate change. SDG 13 has 5 targets which are to be achieved by 2030. They cover a wide range of issues surrounding climate action. The first 3 targets are outcome targets: strengthen resilience and adaptive capacity to climate-related disasters, integrate climate change measures into policies and planning, and build knowledge and capacity to meet climate change. The remaining 2 targets are means of implementation targets to implement the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change and to promote mechanisms to raise capacity for planning and management. Along with each target, there are indicators that provide a method to review the overall progress of each target. The UNFCCC is the primary international, intergovernmental forum for negotiating the global response to climate change. Goal 14 is life below water. SDG 14 is to conserve and sustainably use the oceans, seas and marine resources for sustainable development. The current efforts to protect oceans, marine environments, and small-scale fishers are not meeting the need to protect the resources. Increased ocean temperatures and oxygen loss act concurrently with ocean acidification to constitute the deadly trio of climate change pressures on the marine environment. The first 7 targets are outcome targets: reduce marine pollution, protect and restore ecosystems, reduce ocean acidification, sustainable fishing, conserve coastal and marine areas, and subsidies contributing to overfishing and increase the economic benefits from sustainable use of marine resources. The last 3 targets are means of implementation targets: to increase scientific knowledge, research, and technology for ocean health, support small-scale fishers, implement and enforce international seal law. One indicator under Goal 14 specifically relates to reducing the impacts of marine plastic pollution. Goal 15 is life on land. SDG 15 is to protect, restore and promote sustainable use of terrestrial ecosystems, sustainably manage forests, combat desertification, and halt and reverse land degradation and biodiversity loss. The proportion of remaining forest area, desertification, and species extinction risk are example indicators of this goal. The 9 outcome targets include: conserve and restoring terrestrial and freshwater ecosystems, ending deforestation and restoring degraded forests, ending desertification and restoring degraded land, ensuring the conservation of mountain ecosystems, protecting biodiversity and natural habitats, protecting access to genetic resources and fair sharing of the benefits, eliminate poaching and trafficking of protected species, prevent invasive alien species on land and in water ecosystems, and integrate ecosystem and biodiversity in governmental planning. The 3 means of implementation targets include: increasing financial resources to conserve and sustainably use ecosystem and biodiversity, financing and incentivizing sustainable forest management, and combating global poaching and trafficking. Goal 16 is peace, justice, and strong institutions. SDG 16 is to promote peaceful and inclusive societies for sustainable development, provide access to justice for all, and build effective, accountable, and inclusive institutions at all levels. Rates of birth registration and prevalence of bribery are 2 examples of indicators included in this goal. SDG 16 has 10 outcome targets: reduce violence, protect children from abuse, exploitation, trafficking, and violence, promote the rule of law and ensure equal access to justice, combat organized crime and illicit financial and arms flows, substantially reduce corruption and bribery, develop effective, accountable and transparent institutions, ensure responsive, inclusive and representative decision-making, strengthen the participation in global governance, provide universal legal identity, ensure public access to information and protect fundamental freedoms. There are also 2 means of implementation targets: strengthen national institutions to prevent violence and combat crime and terrorism, promote and enforce non-discriminatory laws and policies. Goal 17 is partnership for the goals. SDG 17 is to strengthen the means of implementation and revitalize the global partnership for sustainable development. Increasing international cooperation is seen as vital to achieving each of the 16 previous goals. Developing multi-stakeholder partnerships to facilitate knowledge exchange, expertise, technology, and financial resources is recognized as critical to the overall success of the SDGs. The goal includes improving North-South and South-South cooperation. Public-private partnerships which involve civil societies are specifically mentioned. SDG 17 is a vision for improved and more equitable trade, as well as coordinated investment initiatives to promote sustainable development across borders. It is about strengthening and streamlining cooperation between nation-states, both developed and developing, using the SDGs as a shared framework and a shared vision for defining that collaborative way forward. It seeks to promote international trade in an equitable trading system. The goal has 17 targets to be achieved by 2030, broken down into 5 categories: finance, technology, capacity building, trade, and systemic issues. Progress towards targets will be measured by 25 indicators. All these targets are regarded as means of implementation targets. I hope you now have a good understanding of what is included in Agenda 2030 and its goals, objectives, and targets. Agenda 2030 is causing many of our issues in the culture today. We address many of these issues in our other videos which you can see on our website, nehemiahreset.org, or on our rumble.com channel. We have included another video on the climate change agenda with Alex Newman available on our website and our Rumble channel. Agenda 2030 is another tool that the cultural Marxists are using to take control of our government and the population. Be sure to watch the coming videos on digital currency and how the climate